I've just been doing what I know you should never do, which is hanging out in flat Earth groups on Facebook. And yeah, I mean, the flat Earthers obviously they're coming up with all these ideas of the firmament and this stuff from Genesis saying that the Earth is ringed with water, or that outside the firmament there is water. And this is actually the truth. Outside the firmament, there is water. However, we describe the firmament, or going back to sort of ancient Babylonian and Assyrian astronomy, which is what all the Book of Genesis was based on in the first place. Beyond the solar system, there is water indeed. There's the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud. Those are composed of comets. The comets are made of water ice. There is indeed water around the solar system, and the firmament itself in science, that's an idea that we've never really lost, which is this idea of the ether, and the mechanical ether of James Clerk Maxwell. That was disproven by the Michelson-Morley experiment, but even Einstein, when he was concocting his theory of general relativity and this notion of space-time, very often spoke about space-time in terms of the idea of an ether, right? And in particle physics today, this is how we sort of think about the ether still. I read that it's we think of there being this background whereby when in our particle accelerators, when we accelerate two particles together, we're trying to impact the background, and it's like a sheet of glass that everything is traveling through, and we're trying to break the glass to see what comes out of it. And that's sort of what our experiments do, and we do assume that there is something like an etheric gravitating background still. And when it comes to ancient astronomy and astronomy in early Christian times, Origen in the 6th century rejected the idea of flat Earth theory, and so did many others. However, geocentrism was still the predominant model at that time, except for Aristarchus of Samos, who I believe advocated heliocentrism. So even in the ancient world, heliocentrism probably wasn't an alien idea or an uncommon idea. It probably was just an unpopular one until the Copernican revolution of the 16th century, with 16th century, or was it 14th century with Copernicus? Because Galileo was in the 16th century, but Copernicus may have been in the 15th century. I'm not certain which it is, the late 15th century, but whatever. So these ideas, it may have occurred really to ancient astronomers that the solar system is indeed ringed with water. They may have just inferred this because we know obviously that water is as a lighter element than lots of other elements. We know that we can take water, right, and if we have a heavier element such as this coin, it will drop to the bottom of the water, so that we know the coin is heavier than the water, of course. And we know now with our advanced science that water is just composed of hydrogen and oxygen. Hence, it is a lighter element indeed than lots of the other elements of the periodic table, or that hydrogen and oxygen are lighter elements of the periodic table. So the water is a comparatively light element, and it's really fascinating to dig up all this biblical stuff and all this stuff and see how it may relate to ancient astronomy and see what the sources may have been drawing from back then. Because when it comes to the Bible itself, its own history is fascinating. It's obviously based on the Torah. The Old Testament's based on the Torah, and the Torah and the Talmud and the Kabbalah and all these ancient Hebrew books. Those go back millennia before the birth of Christ. And then in the mix also there's all the different cultures of the Mediterranean. There's Egypt, there's ancient Greece and Rome and Babylon and Assyria, and even earlier civilizations than that, with really advanced science, engineering, astronomy, and all these sorts of things. So I think unlikely that they certainly did not believe the Earth was flat, though. Definitely not. I think mostly they would have concurred on this idea of the Earth being a ball or being roughly spherical. And in ancient Greece, they believed that the universe was egg-shaped, that it had the shape of an egg. They believed in geocentrism, though, that the sun went around the Earth, not the other way around. And that the sun moved through firmament around the Earth. And the idea of firmament, even now, really, in science, isn't all that ridiculous, I don't think. It's not all that far away from the truth. And I think there is something like an ether still in the background. And I think Einstein and so on would agree with that sort of viewpoint. But there is a kind of quantum mechanical ether surrounding us, some sort of sea sea of, well, what I would think are electrons, really, tunneling particles, keeping us here on this Earth, but yeah, not the Earth itself being flat. And very interestingly enough, I'm just reading like here on, trying to remember what exactly it was. It's this passage from Genesis. Above and below is water. Yeah, above and below is water. Genesis 1:6-8. Yeah, well, that's very interesting because I mean, some portion of Genesis, of course, is talks about the creation of the earth, doesn't it? It talks about cosmology. It talks about, or from their point would be cosmology. From our perspective now would be astrophysics, and talks about the creation of the earth. And yeah, it does indeed make sense via some scientific level of understanding, actually, that above and below there would be water, because the solar system obviously is a sort of ball, really, if you look at it, with the sun in the centre, and the Oort clouds, the Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt surrounding it. So yeah, indeed, above and below there are water, and that's really quite an astounding thing, I think, for the ancients to have figured out. And all these things like the Book of Genesis, those would have been synthesized out of earlier cosmological and astrophysical texts of the ancient world with their astronomy. So yeah, I agree. Elements of it, yes, like do bear up to scrutiny, actually, if you really look at things, and if you appreciate those things in context as well. If you appreciate that, yeah, something about what ancient astronomers knew, and something about the translations that the Bible's gone through, and the stages of development which that holy text has gone through, yeah, it does reflect some truth, of course. In the beginning, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Beautiful passage, sure. But yeah, is that before the time that the sun had turned on, even? Had they predicted that there were suns before our sun, which is also the truth? Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, when it comes to these sorts of very poetic passages about cosmology and creation and all this sort of stuff, it does, yeah, make some sense in some way. It wasn't made in 7 days, though, nothing like, obviously. Or it made in 7 ages or epochs or eons or whatever they say it is in their more advanced theological and cosmological texts, and the cosmogony even of it, I think, is the term in sort of, yeah. But it's interesting to think about what the ancients would have known, and what people in the past would have known and wouldn't have known. And the ancients weren't as ignorant as we think they are, definitely not, I don't think. And the early Christians, the intelligent among them anyway, weren't as ignorant as we think they are. They were all more ignorant than we are now, obviously, but yeah, it's good to think about these things. It's good to have debate about history, and to debate historicism, and to historicism of the Bible, or historicity of the Bible, I should say. And I think that there is room within it for, yeah, you see snatches of things which do reflect truth, but then there's other things which can't really be justified, like the earth not moving, which is like what it says in Psalms, and the earth being the centre of the solar system. Well, we know that now isn't the truth, and that just, well, so what though? The Bible got something wrong. It's like a holy text got one thing wrong, like a scientist from the ancient past, the way ancient past, was wrong about something, and they were all wrong about that. And we know now that things are different. It's just, that's the way it is with science. Is that bad for me to drink a cup of water with a penny in the bottom? I don't think so. It's just copper, isn't it? And nickel. Whatever. I want to fish it out because I want the money. Stingy like that. Save my money. But yeah, thank you for watching this. I hope this has been interesting for you. Just a wee little discussion on Bible texts, what the ancients may or may not have known about astronomy and astrophysics, cosmology, etc. And I wish you lots of luck out there. Bye everyone. Love you lots.